Hello and welcome to Light Warrior Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Karen Kan, author of the #1 best-selling book, Sensitivity is Your Superpower: How to Harness Your Gifts, Fulfill Your Purpose, and Create a Life of Joy. And we are going to have this amazing time today because this is one of the regular segments that we are getting into called Dimensional Deep Dive with Karen and Marcus. And I'm really excited about this because many people are going through a very interesting time right now with the ascension process, so to speak, of the world, the elevation of the world, increasing, expanding, the consciousness expanding. But a lot of people feel like they're right deep down in the right. So Marcus is a wonderful, wonderful mentor to me. We've been together for so many years. In fact, he is very instrumental in helping me get this book done. My big book, Sensitivity is Superpower. And Marcus not only is my mentor, he's also one of my business coaches and has been for a very long time, and is helping me with expanding my message to the rest of the world. And he's also the instructor and the main teacher of the Dimensional Coach Activator Healer Coach program, of which I am a part of, and we go down all sorts of rabbit holes. So welcome, Marcus.
Hey, thank you, Karen. Always fun to go down
we love rabbit holes, right, Marcus?
We love rabbit holes. Nothing better than a good rabbit hole every now and then.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we go through so many rabbit holes when we're together in other calls that we could just go, over here and then lose half of everybody. So I thought, well, why don't we make a dedicated space for these rabbit holes?
Exactly. Great idea. And that we can capture them, because so often we go on these amazing journeys and talk about all sorts of incredible things. And then we go, oh, we never videoed it. We should have captured that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, which class was that? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. So it's great to be able to do this. A real honor. Thank you.
Well, I'm just really, really grateful, for my connection with you and 𝗟𝗡𝗡𝗨𝗟, who you channel, and just hearing a really good news, because Marcus, a lot of people feel like the world's like spiraling downwards, but you and I don't have that perspective yet. Our topic for today is something called the Underworld Journey, which you really helped me highlight in the Activator Healer program, because I had this feeling, but I didn't really have words for it. So today we're going to talk about that. So maybe give us your perspective of, is the world really going to HE double hockey sticks, or are we actually on the other side of that? And what's this Underworld Journey all about? I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because it sometimes feels like we're living in the upside down. The world has turned sort of upside down and about face and sort of a bit all over the place. And that's actually part of the journey through the sort of dimensional realms that, you sort of have to go through the sort of underworld experience. And if I preface it, it might sort of help people to understand, well, what does that actually mean? And I think for you and I, it just gives us, confidence that whatever's happening right now is part of the process. It's not something horrible and, as you said, HE double hockey stick. It's not sort of any of that. It's actually just part of the process of evolution, of expansion, of growth. And we can do this individually. We can do it collectively. And right now we're doing it sort of planetary, species-wide, not just individual as a human, or not just in a small group of individuals, but actually a whole planetary expansion, which is kind of exciting and amazing and beautiful. It doesn't mean it's comfortable. It doesn't mean it's going to be the nicest journey in the world, because the underworld is about shaking things up. And we really get this concept from the ancient Egyptians, who talked about the underworld. And in a lot of their sort of writings, they talk about the underworld concept, and that the underworld is a gateway, is a portal into a more expansive, beautiful, incredible experience. And it's often the fastest way to sort of get from A to B from an expansion point of view, to go from one dimension of reality to a more expanded dimension of reality. It's actually the fastest way to get there. It's also, from a galactic or a universal perspective, we have this concept out in the environment of black holes, and to some degree, black holes are a universal experience of going into sort of the underworld. It's a portal into another dimension of sort of reality, a more expanded, beautiful light dimension of reality, and really nothing can escape it. It sort of draws you in and sort of takes you into this. And some people refer to these things, Karen, as like the dark night of the soul experience. And it's sort of an advanced sort of version of that. And when a collective group goes through this, it's more an underworld journey than it is a dark night of the soul, because it's a collective sort of soul experience. But it's akin to that. And the ancient Egyptians used to do this on purpose. So they would have ceremony, ritual. They would have events around the underworld. They would celebrate the underworld. They wrote about the underworld. They talked about the underworld. Many different sort of concepts around that, but they would do this on purpose. Our modern society, we are encouraged not to do this. We are pushed away from the dark. We created all sorts of movies. Well, you name it, right? Sort of almost, dare I say, religions, or all of these things created an underworld for the opposite reason the underworld exists. So they framed up the underworld as dark and dangerous and scary, and monsters live there and horrible things happen in the underworld. And wherever possible, you try to stay in the light.
Right.
Don't go into the underworld. That's a bad place to be,
It's hell.
But
Oops,
it's
I
hell.
actually said the word. Whoops.
You did. Whoops. But yeah, and that's how they framed it up. Whereas the Egyptians never had that. They didn't frame up that the underworld was hell and bad and horrible, and they understood it as a natural process of evolution, and really the fastest and quickest way to evolve. One of the reasons I think we seem to be sort of feel like we're bumping along the bottom, and things seem to not be really getting better. They seem to almost feel like they're getting worse, which is not really the case. But we're bumping along that because we're desperately trying to stay in the light, and we're not accepting the dark. We're not accepting the underworld. We're not embracing the underworld. We're not sort of pushing ourselves through or diving into it. We are trying desperately to keep out of it.
Okay.
And that's part of the issue right now. That's why
So we're resisting it.
Correct. We're totally resisting
the darkness. Okay.
Totally. And that's a great way to destabilize people, because the natural order is that the universe is trying to draw us into the underworld. We're not going voluntarily, so it's creating way more pain. It's dragging things on longer than it needs to be. And this is the problem of not going to the underworld. You can go into the underworld, get through the underworld, and come out the other side fairly quickly if you sort of dive into it. But when you're desperately trying to stay out of it, then it just takes twice as long.
Wow. Yeah, that's really a key learning, because when we're feeling some, dark stuff within that we need to resolve, it's so much seemingly easier to do the spiritual, so-called spiritual thing, stay in the light, let it go. But I can tell you there's a heck of a lot of people who think they've let it go, but it's still there because there's a recurring pattern in their lives that point to, hey, it's still here. That's why you keep manifesting this pattern you don't like.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And really, at the end of the day, the only way to get over this is to go through it. We have to go through it. So as we bump around, we're desperately trying to go around it, over it, anywhere but through it. And we're being thrust into the through, like we're being forced into the through, because that's the only way you get to the other side. There's no other way. So we like, when this whole thing started to unfold, which it has been for a while, as we know, we reached an event horizon. And when you reach the event horizon of a black hole, for example, there is no escape. You're going through. So you can kick and scream and you can do whatever you like, but you're going through it. There is no turning back. And it's just drawing, and it's drawn us all in, and we're in the underworld to some degree as this goes to air, we're sort of in that space. And so the best way to go through an underworld is to go into the underworld. you know, and that's about being real and honest and aware and conscious of really what's going on, and not trying to sort of go, oh, I don't want to know, you know, it's nothing's happening, it's all good, it's fine. I don't want to know about it. And it's much better to go right into it and go, okay, yeah, this is uncomfortable and I'm sad and I'm upset or I'm this or I'm that, but that's okay. And you then start to process the underworld experience. You start to get the insights and the wisdom and the epiphanies and the aha moments, and you have these, you know, in between the anguish and the fear and the scariness and the whatever else we want to sort of label it, you get these beautiful insights and aha moments and awarenesses that you wouldn't have otherwise got if you hadn't gone through the underworld. And it's almost why the Egyptians did it, is to become more expansive, to become more knowledgeable and wise, and they realized that all of the secrets of the universe live in the underworld.
Okay, say that again.
All of the secrets of the universe live in the underworld, live in the darkness. It lives there and then shines light, you know, and it's like that eternal creation and destructive sort of, you know, breathing in and breathing out. The underworld looks destructive, but what it's doing is it's shaking the foundation so that you can shift back into the expansive creative space. And so therefore, in that destruction, what looks like destruction, in that destabilization, in that shaking up of the environment, it's actually creating way for the new light, the new awareness, the aha moments, right? So you imagine going into the dark and it's all dark and it's dark and, oh my God, it's scary and I'm facing all my deepest fears and da 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 da. And then these little cracks appear and these light beams of light start shining in and you go, oh, wow, that's what that's about. Ah, that's what this is about. It's why when you go to a lot of these like personal development things, the Anthony Robbins and the, you know, these sort of people, that they take you almost into underworld experiences in minute form, like walking on hot coals is an underworld type of experience, right? It's scary, it's frightening, it's dark, it's like, oh my God, I'm going to get burnt and I'm going to die. Oh my God, right? But you get through the other side and you have all these aha moments and awarenesses and you start to realize how magnificent and incredibly expansive you are.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the modern day ritual of an underworld experience or type of underworld experience.
Now, when in Activator, in that activation process where we were in the sarcophagus, is that one of those underworld journeys?
Not
really.
so much. That's more an initiation experience. It's not really an underworld experience. The underworld experience is more like a cave journey, which is some of the things I'm sort of taking you know, the Activator crew through at the moment. Is that's much more the version, the force version or the guided version or the, you know, version of the underworld.
Okay. All right. That's really neat, because I heard this is, I don't know how accurate it is, but I heard it through a course through David Wilcock that Jesus had slept in the sarcophagus, and supposedly Napoleon or somebody, I don't know, me and my history, you know, that it was really, really hard to like sleep overnight in there because your stuff would come up and then, you know, people would be afraid and crazy and whatever. So is there any truth to that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting theory. I'm not sure. I think, you know, I think the, you know, the middle of the pyramid is an energizing place. It's a frequency alignment space. It's so I would think if you spent the night in the sarcophagus or spent a lot of time there, you may have underworld experiences. So you may have your stuff come up, but you're more likely to come out of it more energized, more enlightened, more aware, have a whole lot of amazing experiences from that. You know, you receive a lot when you're in the sarcophagus, when you're in the, you know, in that space. Mainly from a frequency point of view, a realignment of frequencies and energizing. You know, there's a lot of energetic, beautiful, energizing qualities. Still an expansive experience. So akin to a cave journey, you know, to the underworld experience, but not really having to go through a lot of that dark. But I'm sure things would come up to clear to give you more light. But I would experience a much more energizing,
Oh,
connected
okay.
experience is what I would think would happen. Just
Okay.
because of the resonant frequencies that are in the King's Chamber and around the sarcophagus, and these are not sort of destabilizing frequencies. They're much more stable frequencies,
Oh,
and
okay.
much more energizing. Again, it doesn't mean you wouldn't see your dark side, but I think you come out of it much more enlightened than you would come out of it sort of in that dark night of the soul sort of, painful
Okay.
experience. There are other
Well,
rituals they did. Yeah, they didn't have, in all of the writings you read about, they never really used the pyramid to do sort of underworld experiences. They had lots of other temples and stuff where they did those underworld experiences.
okay. Now I heard from my friend Adele Good, who does a lot of sacred site exploration. That's kind of her thing. She says that oftentimes next to the pyramid is a temple.
Correct. Correct.
And
That's where it would happen.
mm,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And a lot
Now
of the
I
temples had things like not baths, but these deep pools that
yes.
they used to do the underworld stuff in, right? So these deep dark pools that
Oh,
people
I saw
would,
movies
if,
with that.
yeah, they get thrust into the water and
Yeah,
they
yeah,
have to
yeah.
sort of find their way out or die, or it feels like they're going to die, right? And it's dark and that was a forced underworld experience, like an initiation type of, but more an underworld experience than an initiation.
Okay. What about people doing that sensory deprivation tank?
Yeah.
Is that like does that
Well,
help or not
I
really?
don't, yeah, I think, again, I'm not sure that's going to thrust you into the underworld. I think you're going to face some of the dark stuff and it can be a bit scary. I mean, I've done the sensory deprivation and I found it really beautiful and calming and didn't really go through any dark night of the sort of
Yeah, me
soul or
neither.
underworld experience, but I'm sure you could, if you've got a fear of the dark, which most people do, if you've, and then all of a sudden you lose yourself in that sensory deprivation, that could flick you into
Hmm.
that experience. And to some degree, some of those pools would probably do just that. So yeah, I think you could have an underworld experience through that process for sure.
I wonder about this is the weirdest thing, but I would
I
always
love
wondered
weird.
like if somebody was okay, so in a prison, not that I've been in a prison,
Yeah,
but in a prison, if someone's really bad, they put you separate from everyone else
yeah,
in a cell that
yeah,
has, what is it called? Solitary confinement. And
totally,
apparently that was like the
totally.
last thing you wanted to do. And I'm like, I'd like that. If I was
Well,
in
I think,
prison with a
yeah,
whole bunch of people that I didn't like their energy, I'd rather be in solitary. So
yeah,
does that, why,
that
why
would
is
do
it
it.
so bad for them? Like, why do they feel like so crazy in there? Is it similar?
Yeah, I think, I think that, again, that would be an underworld type experience where you're just with yourself. I mean, a lot of the underworld stuff is being thrust out by
Mm,
yourself, being with the self,
okay.
and have to sort of confront that
Ah,
experience. And there are lots of ways people do that. They go on solo camping trips out in the middle of nowhere. They do a pilgrimage along the trails in from Mexico to Canada. There's lots of ways you can sort of force that. But I would think a solitary confinement would be a type of underworld experience where you're just with yourself, because the underworld experience is a self journey, and it is about facing your darkest side, just seeing, yeah, the seeing you for you. Like, it's actually meeting the true you, and you've got to go through everything that is not that to get to that. That's the sort of underworld sort of
mm,
thing, is that you're facing everything that is not you
I
and
love that.
find you, right? So
Mm,
so when you're in the light to find you, you get distracted by everything that isn't you. Right? There are all these shiny objects and things that you can do and the fun you can have, right? That you never confront you, because there's plenty of distractions in the light.
mm,
And the light is really a place where you share yourself with others, where you are giving to others, where you are connecting with others, where you are co-creating and collaborating, and and doing those beautiful things, right? So there's lots of distractions. So you don't get a lot of time just to be with you. Whereas in the underworld, because of the darkness, you can't, even if there are other people there, you can't see them, right? So there's no distractions of others or distractions of any of those things. There's just you, and you're there fully facing you.
Now, is
And
there a
that's the,
way that,
yeah,
yeah, you talked about earlier, like, choosing to go into the underworld instead of well, not instead of, but many of us, maybe the collective, is going into this underworld journey kicking and screaming because we don't know that we're supposed to, and it is it's a good thing, right? Because we were taught, stay in the light, stay in the light, stay in the light, stay in the light. But if someone says, okay, Marcus, I am ready to journey through the underworld, how do I choose that instead of necessarily being thrown into something super, that I'm not expecting? Is there a way to like choose that?
yeah, you can totally choose it, and you can either have that facilitated, you can either go on that journey yourself, taking yourself on retreat and forcing yourself into the darkness is a way to sort of do it. I think it can be helpful if you've got a guide to help you with that. And whether you go on a retreat with a guide or whether it's just the guide will sort of share with you how you get in, what you do when you're in there, be there on the other side. Because really, people can't come with you. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not a collective journey. And so someone can help you get in. Someone can tell you what's going to happen when you're in and what to do. And someone can be waiting on the other side, but they can't be in there with you. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
They can't be with you. It is a solo journey because just the underworld darkness and sort of says solo. It says just me, because you've got to face you. You've got to face all the darkness. You've got to face the reality of who you are, the fragility of who you are, and the power of who you are. And it's couples can do it from a relationship point of view, and groups can do it, but it's not the same expansion as when you do it on your own. So again, I think it's a good thing to do, from time to time, that you sort of push yourself into that or consciously journey into the underworld.
Okay, so many people say, well, shamans are known to go into the underworld with their,
Correct.
lack of a better term, clients or whatever, but they also do shamanic journeys. Is that similar, different, or variations on the theme?
Yeah, it's sort of variations on the theme. So for a shaman, often the underworld is the portal or gateway into greater awareness and insight and finding, the things that, so they use the underworld as a portal rather than, I'm going into the underworld to stay in the underworld and to, do whatever I need to do. It's more a gateway or a portal into the higher wisdom and the greater knowledge. That's what they use the underworld for specifically. And so, that's how they get access to greater wisdom. It's a portal. It becomes a portal.
Gotcha.
To get access to the light.
Yeah. Now, so are you saying that, I mean, we talked about the collective, going through kind of underworld journey of sorts.
Yeah,
Currently,
totally.
most of the collective is not consciously in a cave or, trying to do that.
Yeah, they're not conscious. That's a
For
problem.
me, so for me, if I choose, like, say I have this dream, right? And I'm going towards the dream, there were things that I will butt up against, anything that is not in alignment with that dream or resonant with that dream. So then these things come up and it may trigger me. And then I could go, consciously into that piece. I don't know whether that is like a mini
totally.
mini underworld journey through these triggers.
Yeah. That's definitely the sort of idea around the underworld. And you can have mini underworlds as well as you can have, full on deep, sort of underworld experiences. They're not necessarily all the same, and you don't have to necessarily thrust yourself into, the biggest, craziest journey. You can have sort of mini versions of that, and yeah, you can utilize it in a session with a client type of thing. If you're seeing clients, you know, you could do the shaman sort of approach to it, where you're using it as a portal. So when you use it as a gateway or a portal, you're not actually going fully into the underworld experience, but you're using it as a gateway into more expansive light to receive whatever you need to receive. And there are processes you can take clients through that last half an hour or an hour. So they become these mini intense sort of underworld experiences. And they give insight and awareness, but they might not be the big full sort of, you know, experience. You know, when we talk about the collective of humankind, over the years we've gone through these mini sort of dark, you know, underworld experiences, and they helped. But right now we're going through a big underworld experience, like a full journey of underworld experience. And for us individually, we just need to do our own mini versions of it to keep clearing and to stay in a different, to leap into a different timeline where the underworld experience is finished.
Oh, I see. I see.
So
So
this is where
it's like a
timeline split.
living. Okay. Okay. Well, we're
Yeah,
going to come back to that
that's
in our
right.
next
That's something
show.
we come back to. Nice segue. But
Yeah.
yes, that's when timelines start to split, when various groups have gone through different, because in reality, the underworld experience is a gateway portal to the next dimension of reality, right? And from a universal point of view, you know, black holes, like this is similar, is a journey into another dimension of reality from a universal perspective. And so above, so below, right? So whatever's happening out there is happening in here, and so some of us have gone through these black holes or underworld experiences and have now stepped into a whole different timeline of a greater expansive. And this is why you have these arguments right now, and these people who are saying one thing and not seeing the other, and we're all sitting there going, these people are insane. Like, can't they see what we can see? And no, they can't see because they haven't gone through that journey. And so what we have awareness of now, they don't. So classic is when you see someone lying and you know they're blatantly lying, but they think they're not. And they think no one can see the lying. And it's like, that's incredible. Like, it's so obvious, it's ridiculous. But they don't see it. So they keep doing the lie, thinking they're fooling everybody.
Huh. So are you saying, and I know we're going to delve deeper into this in our next show, but are you saying that, you know, some people might say, well, you know, there's all this data, or I don't know, there's no such thing as a fact these days, it seems, but, you know, this data supporting this is harmful or this is helpful or whatever, or say natural medicines. Okay, we'll say natural, you know, and then there's this pattern. I like seeing pattern. I'm a big picture person, right? So I see this pattern of it's like, nope, you can't say that. Nope, you can't say that. But I'm like, but there's data that says that's helpful.
But in
So
that timeline,
so then I'm like, why is it just the few of us see that? Like that like pattern of just like, nope, you can't say that. Nope, you can't say that. Nope, you can't. And everyone else is like, yeah, it's just bad for you. You know?
Yeah, totally.
It's just horse paste, you know.
Yeah. These are the timeline issues that we're sort of facing, and the underworld will lead you into a new timeline or a new expansion of reality. That's what an underworld will do. Underworld experience, and it's why the Egyptians did it on purpose.
Wow,
You know,
wow, that's
and
great.
lots of other ancient sort of, you know, and ancient civilizations did the same thing. They all used to do it. You know, Mayans did it, Aztecs did it, all of those. You know, American Indians. Aboriginal, so the Aboriginal version of it was what's called walkabout.
Yes.
And they go on walkabout, right, where they just disappear, right? They just walk out into the bush and no one knows where they are. They just disappear and, you know, they just vanish for a while. And so all of these sort of, you know, ancient cultures all had underworld experiences, whereas our modern day society doesn't really promote that. You know, it's sort of a bit modern times where we've started to do bits of it, you know, with and people do it obviously, but as a collective we're shunned and pushed away from really doing it. And there are pockets where it happens, with little, groups that go away and do various experiences to purposefully go into an underworld experience. But they're isolated, they're not like, oh, at school, everybody goes through the underworld experience. You know what I mean? Like, when you get to grade, and
Imagine
look,
that.
some schools do sort of versions of it. We've got a couple of schools here in Australia that when you get to a certain year level, you go and live in a retreat environment. So you don't go to normal school,
Really?
you go out into the bush. Oh, yeah, yeah. Actually, King Charles came over to Australia to actually do that year. He actually did that year. It's here in our state in Victoria, and they go and live in a retreat, and they go overnight camping and bushwalking, and so that's sort of as close as you get to the underworld experience from a school point of view, which is really beautiful and wonderful. But the thing that's missing, which is critical, is the ritual around it and the full
Okay.
consciousness of it. So they do it as a life-changing experience for kids, which it is. They do camping overnight and they go in small groups and they do it as a fun experience, but they're not doing it fully. They're not sitting around a fire going, okay, here's the ancient wisdom, here's the knowledge, here's what you're actually doing, and here's what you're going to see and greet and meet, and here's how to do it more intensely, and da 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 da. So they go some of the way, but not all of the way.
Okay. Now I know that this is something that's near and dear to your heart, and that you are helping people through that and guiding and teaching others to guide others. So can you tell a little bit about your activator program, like what's been going on? How are you helping kind of midwife some of this
Yeah.
ancient wisdom?
Yeah, so really the whole process is to help people to stay, be stable in space and time, but more importantly, expand into the next dimension of awareness for themselves. And so there are processes that we take people through to connect with that experience, with that underworld experience. One of the exercises is called the cave journey, where we actually force people into a mini underworld experience or a rapid underworld experience. There are other sort of exercises we take people through, activating various aspects of their reality to help them to expand into the next, dimension of awareness, to help expand their consciousness and to restabilize themselves in that new version, that more expanded version of themselves. And often the healing crisis and people get, sick and ill because of that, of not going into an underworld experience, not purposefully doing it. So the body naturally sends people into an underworld experience. And often illness,
Oh,
those sort of things are that version of underworld experience. So, so if you're not purposefully doing this, then you start to attune your body starts to become destabilized. It's then more likely to attract an illness or be affected by, chemicals or, the environment or internal, external environment or emotions or whatever, and sort of force you into an underworld experience. Because we naturally
mm,
have to go into it. We can't live outside of an underworld experience for the whole of our life. It's just not possible. It's just not
yep,
possible. It's the ebb and
yeah.
flow. It's the breathing in, breathing out, right? And yeah, and if
So
you're
was your
constantly
chronic fatigue part of that? Because I went
totally,
through that.
100%,
Yeah.
100% part of that. That was an underworld experience. It lasted 18 months, 2 years. That was
Yeah, mine too.
definitely underworld. Yeah, and that's the issue. If you're not doing it on purpose, then things take longer. You get dragged along the bottom for longer. It's more intense. If you're taking
Oh, yeah.
bite-sized pieces of it regularly, then you don't necessarily have to have that big, huge, humongous, because you're shifting and changing and expanding based on the underworld experience. But when you're, yeah, not allowing yourself to go into the underworld experience, then at some point the body's going to throw you into it, thrust you into it, and it's
Yay,
going to be
body.
more violent. Yeah, it's going to be worse. So, so these constant little, you know,
Yeah. Oh, well, somebody wants to be part of the show.
they do. Yeah, so you're thrust into it
Right. Oh
if you
my
don't
goodness.
voluntarily. And so this is what's happening on the planet collectively. We're being thrust into it. And that's why it
Mm,
seems quite a bit violent and yucky and horrible. And,
mm.
you can feel helpless and I don't know what to do. And, uh, that's a classic underworld experience where you feel helpless and hopeless, and because it's trying to strip you bare of everything. It's trying,
Yeah, that
it's like trying to
vulnerability.
tear your clothes off and that you're standing there totally naked and it's like, okay, I've got nothing. But in the
Yeah.
nothing, you find everything. That's the fun part about this. In the nothing, you find everything. When you've got what you think is everything on, you don't tend to find more. You tend to go, oh, it's just the same sort of stuff, and I'm just layering more of the same stuff. But when you've actually got nothing, when you're absolutely bare, you start to connect with everything, and that's everything more. Do you know what I mean? It's a bigger form of everything, and you have these incredible realizations, and yeah, amazing things happen.
So, okay, meme coming. In the nothing is everything.
Correct. In the
Okay.
nothing is everything. And we've
In the
been taught
nothing
that
is
in the nothing is nothing. Therefore, stay away from it. There's no point going to it. That's why it's really scary. That's why just all this stuff, because there's nothing in the darkness when actually there's everything in the darkness.
Hmm.
You know, when we go to
There's
sleep at
incredible
night in the
potential.
dark, we shut our eyes, we go into the dark, and every night we sort of have these almost sort of like these underworld experiences where we go into another dimension of reality. And we go into those dimensions of reality through the dark. We
Right?
turn the lights off, we close our eyes. Yeah, and even if we're on, night shift and we have to sleep during the day, people have to make things as dark as possible to get into that dimensional experience, right? So that's almost like an unconscious version of it. The underworld experience, when you're fully conscious, is the one that really helps you to break free and see all that amazing stuff. But almost every night we sort of have these underworld type experiences.
Right. Yeah. I definitely, I dream a lot, and
Yeah,
I'm always fascinated how it relates, to whatever is
totally.
sometimes in me, which is not recognized yet, but then
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
played out
yeah,
in the
totally,
dream state. I'm like,
totally.
oh, okay. Yeah.
So these are sort of
I'm not
mini
really sure
underworld.
what the buffet of food part means, but
Are you hungry? I don't know.
no, I don't know. Like it's,
Nurture
I live in a
yourself.
small town, so my parents live in the bigger town where there's like these buffet things
Yeah,
of like
yeah,
amazing Chinese food, right? That I kind
yeah,
of miss
yeah,
from time to time.
yeah,
So I'm not
absolutely.
really sure what the message is there, but so
And
Marcus,
this
where
is
do
the
people
problem with
find
this.
you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So they can go to centerforquantumhealing.org or hop on to Heart of the Matrix Facebook group. That's where I share a whole lot of stuff, a public group, Heart of the Matrix Facebook group, and request to join. And yeah, they can find out more there. So
Oh, that's
absolutely.
great. And Center for Conscious Entrepreneurs, Center is spelled the Canadian way, like with the
Yeah.
TRE,
Center
right?
for
Oh,
quantumhealing.org.
Center for Quantum Healing.
Yeah, .org.
Yeah.
That's the one to go to.
.org. Okay.
But certainly join Heart of the Matrix, where I talk about all sorts of stuff, and we have these
You do.
conversations. Well, sort of these sort of
You give us a
conversations.
ton of stuff. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's super cool. So, yay! This is
Yay,
fun.
that's great. Yeah,
This
thanks,
is fun.
Marcus, for being here. I really appreciate your
Oh,
time and your wisdom, and
thank you.
I just love chatting with you. And so we're looking forward to the next time we get
Yeah,
together. We're going to talk about rapid timeline jumping.
yeah. Let's do that. That'll be fun. Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. See you
All right.
soon.
Thanks, everyone, for joining
Hey,
in. Until next time, big love to you, everyone. Thank you so much, Marcus.
thank you. Ciao.